Well, in other news, we do have my colleague Sophie Mokoena, the SABC News International Editor, in conversation with Vincent Magwenya, the presidency's spokesperson, about a myriad of issues. Let's go live to Sophie. Sophie, it's over to you.
Well, indeed, you are correct. There are so many issues globally, particularly when you look at the geopolitics, and South Africa is not immune to what's happening around the world. As you know that since 1994, the new dispensation, the government, starting with President Mandela, President Mbeki, President Kgalema, President Zuma, and now President Ramaphosa, has been involved in ensuring that there's peace and security on the continent and around the world. The critical issue here is the Ukraine matter. You'd recall that after the war started in Ukraine, South Africa was called to ensure that it plays its part in terms of ensuring that there's peace and security in Ukraine. The country came under fire, I must say, that many people in the country, including some of the opposition parties, saying that South Africa's engagement with Russia it's not accepted because of Russia standing in the world. But ironically today, the very same countries that they were praising and saying that they stand for moral high ground are the ones that are at the forefront to try and engage Russia. And earlier on, I spoke to the ambassador of Ukraine. She told me that they're looking forward for President Zelenskyy to visit South Africa. And this is an opportunity for South Africa to take its rightful place in terms of ensuring that there's peace around the world, particularly because South Africa does communicate with Ukraine and with Russia. And therefore, I'm going to speak to the president's spokesperson, Vincent, to tell us about this visit in April, where we are going to see the president of Ukraine visiting South Africa. Thank you so much for your time. This is quite a big story for South Africans. When you look back how South Africa was under fire and critics that South Africa is biased, what will be high on the agenda?
Well, first of all, Sophie, the visit by President Zelenskyy to South Africa is a culmination of a number of engagements that President Ramaphosa has held with both President Zelenskyy as well as President Putin. And when President Zelenskyy is here, they will continue discussing the beginning of what we would like to see as a peace process that will set the two warring parties in that conflict on a road to peace. You will recall that President Ramaphosa was part of an African initiative, which we call the African Peace Initiative, that went to Ukraine and to Russia and engaged both heads of states on a need for dialogue as the only path to achieve a lasting peace. Finally, we are delighted, I suppose, to see a number of countries beginning to rally around a point that as South Africa we made at the onset of this conflict, that this is not a war that either party will ever win. This is a conflict that requires all parties involved to sit around the table and work towards a negotiated and peaceful resolution to this conflict.
And is the president also engaging the Russian Federation President Vladimir Putin, taking him on board in terms of South Africa's view that there must be a peace process?
There's always been alignment between President Ramaphosa and President Putin on the need for a dialogue. President Ramaphosa recently met with Minister Lavrov during the G20 Foreign Ministers Summit, and the president did inform Minister Lavrov that he has invited President Zelenskyy to come to South Africa as part of the ongoing engagements or the continuation of discussions to eventually get the parties to talk about peace and about stability in that part of the world. President will be reaching out to President Putin once more, and they're in constant communication, but he will be reaching out prior to President Zelenskyy to once again affirm that alignment that it will take commitment to a peaceful resolution of that conflict to set the two countries on a lasting peace.
I would have failed in my duties if I don't ask this question. A world-class city, Johannesburg, on the continent in a mess, ahead of the G20. The president is a resident of this city. He can't say he wasn't aware. Are we likely going to see him really cracking a whip, not only in terms of the executive at local government and provincial, but in the party, because the deployment you do as a party speaks to how serious you are in terms of ensuring that this nation is happy about services they get, the political deployment?
So, Sophie, we should not see the president's visit to the city of Johannesburg as an isolated event. This is part and parcel of the process the president has been driving with respect to really embedding the district development model, giving it practical effect, and also making it tangible, both from a development point of view, but also from a perspective of sustainable, improved governance. You will also recall that when the president launched the eThekwini Presidential Working Group, he said this is a model that he's going to take to other metros around the country who are finding themselves faced with the enormous set of challenges that eThekwini has had to deal with, that Joburg finds itself in. And so this is again a continuation of a process that has been ongoing for quite some time, and the president is looking forward to the similar results that we're beginning to see out of eThekwini, where there's cooperation within the DDM model, but also bringing in external stakeholders with a vested interest in seeing a stable, growing city, business, civil society, labor, just like we did at eThekwini, will form part of this working group, and we can work together. It's not a government exercise only, it's an exercise of all of us as citizens with an interest in seeing Johannesburg returning to its glory days.
Thank you so much for your time. I know you are quite busy, but you took time to come and answer the question on Ukraine. Thank you so much. That was the president's spokesperson. The issue here is Ukraine, but I took that moment to try and get a sense of what the visit here at Johannesburg Metro is all about. As you know, that Johannesburg is the largest city on the continent, but also in terms of GDP, and it is a critical city around the continent that is supposed to be at par with other cities around the world, but in a very terrible state. And I think we will have to visit eThekwini and see that intervention at eThekwini, is it working, so that we can make sense whether the intervention in Johannesburg will work ahead of the G20. And I think the citizens of Gauteng and Johannesburg, South Africa, they deserve better.
Indeed they do. Thank you so much. That's Sophie Mokoena, our international editor here at SABC.